Hello everyone, I am Akhil Rajaratnam and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today marks a very important event in India's rich historical journey. So today is the commencement of the construction of the iconic Red Fort. The Independence Day and all, we have seen the Prime Minister, the President and all, they will be hoisting the flag in our Red Fort. So on April 29, 1639, the foundation stone of our own Red Fort in Delhi was laid, and this majestic fort was completed on May 13, 1646. Okay, let's take a moment to remember this particular historical milestone and kick off our session with a very short quiz. So you can see the question on the screen. Okay, so which Mughal emperor was responsible for the construction of Red Fort? Humayun, Shah Jahan, Babur, Aurangzeb. Okay, so who was behind the construction of this majestic fort, that is Red Fort? Humayun, Shah Jahan, Babur, Aurangzeb. Okay, so you can post your answers in the comment box. So by the end of the session, we'll be going through this question again. Okay, all right. So these are the topics for today's daily news analysis. I've taken 4 topics from both the Hindu as well as the Indian Express. Okay, so first one is related to the emission intensity targets. Emission intensity targets. So here we are coming up across a new term, that is a emission intensity target. So here we'll have an overview of what is India's target for reducing this emission intensity, and what are some basics also, like greenhouse gas, all these things also will be discussing. Okay, all right. Second one is related to the deputy speaker. Okay, so it's been a quite long time since the post of this deputy speaker is lying vacant. Okay, so we'll discuss what is the relevance of this post of deputy speaker, what is actually the why this particular post is lying vacant, what are the implications of that. All these things we'll be discussing in our second article. Okay, all right. So third one again will be this little on a historical context. So this is related to a particular committee, that is a Rajamannar committee. Rajamannar committee again. So here we will be revisiting related to some issue happened in Tamil Nadu. So related to that, we'll be revisiting what is this Rajamannar's committee, what is actually the Rajamannar's committee report for seeking the state autonomy, and also some of the contemporary pushes which are again going or aligning with the Rajamannar committee recommendation itself. Okay. All right, the final one again, it's related to a SIPRI report related to this. So India's military expenditures was 9 times that of Pakistan. Okay, so we'll be discussing some statistics related to this SIPRI report, and also we'll be comparing India with some other our neighboring countries or Europe. All these things will also be done. Okay, all right. So these are the 4 topics for today's daily news analysis. Okay, all right. So before moving on to the discussion, let me introduce you to 2 of our products. So one is a 1-year prelims comes mains integrated course. So this will be for the aspirants who are aiming the 2026 examination. Okay, also we will have a 2-year prelims comes mains integrated course. This will be for the aspirants who are aiming the 2027 examination. Okay, so specialities are, will be having 8,000 plus hours of GS will be there, along with CSAT will also be there, and also 200 plus hours of current affairs will also be included. So we have expert faculty for all the important subjects also. Okay, okay. So that's it regarding your 2 of our products. So let's move on to first topic. So this is related to the emission intensity target. Okay, so this is from the Indian Express. Okay, so we'll start with a very hot development in India's climate policy, emission intensity target. So it's really important that in shaping our how these industries in India actually have to operate complying with the emission intensity target. So the government has actually released the the draft greenhouse gas emission intensity guidelines have been released. So 2025 that has been released. Okay, so that will be finalized anytime soon also. So we'll be discussing regarding this. Okay, all right. So we'll see a PYQ, previous year question in this regard. 2015 it was asked, should the pursuit of carbon credits and clean development mechanism set up under UNFCCC be maintained even though there has been a massive slide in the value of carbon credit discussed with respect to India's energy need for economic growth. So this is related to the carbon credit as well as a UNFCCC mechanism. Again, here also we'll be discussing regarding the carbon credit, how these intensity targets are actually related with the carbon credits. All these things we'll be discussing here also. Okay, all right. So anyway, first let's make sure that we are understanding what are actually the basics of this. Okay, so we'll start with what is a greenhouse gas itself. What is a greenhouse gas, or the GHG? Gs. Okay, so we can see some of the important examples of the GHG, that is carbon dioxide, methane is there, nitrous oxide is there. So these are some of the important greenhouse gases. Okay, so what do you mean by greenhouse gases? Okay, so these are the gases which are maybe some of the gases which are responsible for the warming of Earth, overall warming of Earth. So that we call it as a global warming. Global warming. Okay, so what is the consequence of this global warming? It will eventually lead to climate change. It will eventually lead to climate change. So the countries across the world, they are in discussion, they are coming up with new and new plans so that the emission of these particular greenhouse gases can be reduced, and ultimately this climate change can be maybe delayed or maybe reversed also. Okay, so this is why we are, or maybe the countries across the world, or maybe the organizations, whoever it be, they are coming up with the new and new plans. Okay, new and new plans, and obviously we'll be hearing this new and new terms also. Okay, all right. So now when we talk about this greenhouse gas emission intensity, we are referring to the amount of these gases, emitted for every unit of economic output. Okay, so this is purely an environment topic. So how is this economy is coming into play, and why we have to consider this economy? So that's a very good question. Okay, you can think of it like this: if you are running a bakery, or maybe if you are running some other what shop. Okay, so it would be the amount of carbon dioxide you emit for every loaf of bread. You are making this loaf of bread. Okay, so what is actually the carbon dioxide release while making this particular one loaf of bread? How much is it emitted? So based on your market size, how much carbon dioxide will be the entire company will be emitting. So this is how economical aspect is also coming into being. Okay, so you the carbon dioxide you emit for every loaf of bread you make. Okay, so why are we focusing? Why are we focusing on this intensity rather than just total emission? For example, total emission means what? What is actually the amount of carbon dioxide released? How much tons of carbon dioxide has been released? How much ton of methane has been released? How much tons of nitrous oxide has been released? So this should be the absolute emission. Okay, this should be the absolute emission. So here we are not talking about absolute emission. Here we are talking about the emission intensity. Okay, so that is a difference here. Okay, so why are we focusing on the intensity and not just absolute emission? There will be some reason why this new term has been coming in. Okay, so imagine if you are baking more bread, but we are using cleaner ovens. So each loaf is causing a lesser pollution. Okay, so one loaf, if it's releasing what earlier it was releasing 1 ton of carbon dioxide, now with more maybe more advanced technology and now we will be emitting only 0.5 tons of carbon dioxide. Okay, so for the same economic output itself, the emission is less. Okay, so that is the significance of this greenhouse gas emission intensity. Okay, greenhouse gas emission intensity. So basically, each loaf is causing less pollution. Earlier, the pollution level for every loaf was higher. Now, the for every loaf is actually lower. Okay, so this is actually the key point. So maybe we can say it's actually a more smarter, maybe a more flexible way to tackle this climate change. But at the same time, we are not compromising on the what economic output also. Every country or maybe every industry has to make sure that the greenhouse gas emission intensity is focused rather than the absolute term itself. Okay, so this is a key point, or these are actually the basics of this. What is a greenhouse gas and what is actually the greenhouse emission intensity? Okay, all right. So now our point is the government has released the draft target rules 2025. Draft target rules 2025. So these are actually the rules that was put forward by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Obviously, these kind of things, anything related to environment, most of the things related to environment, that will be released by this particular ministry, MOE FCC. Okay, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So they are actually the ones who are issuing this particular guidelines. Okay, but to keep an eye on this, to keep an eye on everything, other bodies, the market oversight is actually regulated by the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, and the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Okay, so these are the, so these guidelines were issued by MOE FCC, but still the market oversight, the overall management is actually done by the CERC as well as the B. Okay, so these are the important organizations. So why they are actually issuing it now? What is actually the goal? What is actually the goal? The goal is they want to make sure that every intensive sector, every energy intensive, every sector is actually energy intensive. For example, the major sectors like power sector. Okay, especially these guidelines, they are actually power sector, the steel sector, the cement sector. Okay, so these are some of the top emitters. Some of the top emitters like aluminum sector is also there, chemical sector is also coming. Okay, chemical sector. Okay, so basically these guidelines are aimed at uh, these major industries. Okay, so they wanted to cut down. They wanted to cut down the government want these industry to cut down the amount of greenhouse gases they emit. But it's not an absolute emission. They want to make sure that this emission intensity is getting noted. Okay, so they want them to develop more advanced technologies or maybe any other way in which without affecting the economic output they want to reduce the emissions in the emissions which are done. Okay, so these rules are actually having a timeline also. Okay, so they use 2023 2025. So this 2023 2024. So this will be the baseline here. This will be the baseline here. Basically before picture. Okay, before picture. So our target period will be later. First target period will be 2025-26, and after that maybe next target period will be updated. So like that, for example, what we do for this Paris Agreement, and every time we'll be having a stock take. So like that way, the first target period is 2025-26, and after that we'll have a frequent updation will be. Okay, and here's where this carbon credits are. Carbon credits. So carbon credits means we have already discussed in our past DNAs and all. So carbon credits means the badges of honor or maybe the rewards. They can actually trade for money, But those who fail, for example, if you are if one company is not able to achieve their emission target, so at that time they can actually fund another company which has performed well in a in this emission. So this is how this is working. Okay, so they are actually giving a penalty. That penalty is actually incentivizing the other company. Okay, so carbon credits are one of the important uh, elements in this particular uh, GEI target rules. Okay, all right. So we already had this kind of a mechanism earlier also. So this is something which is coming in 2025, but earlier also we had this kind of a mechanism. So that is known as a PAT scheme. That is known as a PAT scheme or perform, achieve, trade scheme. PAT or the perform, achieve, trade scheme. So this was actually introduced in 2012. This was introduced first in 2012. Okay, so perform, achieve, and trade. Again, from this name itself, it is clearly understood what is actually this PAT. Okay, so but there are actually some differences between this PAT as well as this. Okay, so PAT scheme mainly focused on energy efficiency, but it was more voluntary. It was more voluntary and maybe incentive driven. But GES has different things. Okay, again here also some important organizations were coming. So this was part of India's national mission for enhanced energy efficiency, and it is coming under this umbrella scheme. Under this umbrella scheme, that is NAPCC, National Action Plan on Climate Change. In this particular NAPCC, many other schemes are coming. For example, the Ganga cleaning mission was coming. Like that way, maybe a sustainable agriculture scheme was coming. So like that, many important things were coming in this particular PAT scheme. Okay, so we'll see what is actually the basic difference between this PAT scheme and the newly introduced GEI target rules. Okay, so like I've said, the PAT scheme was more likely a voluntary scheme. It was an incentive driven voluntary scheme, but this new GEI target rules, they are mandatory for every company or maybe for every uh, stakeholders involved. So this GEI target rules are mandatory, and they go beyond what the PAT scheme has been done. So PAT scheme was mostly focusing on the energy zoning, energy zooming straight into the carbon emissions only. But here it is not like that. Here maybe simple words we can say that it's no longer just about saving energy. not about just about saving energy, but the pollution content is also pollution content, like what is actually the emission intensity. Okay, so this is also coming. Okay, so what does this mean for India? Why we are actually coming up with new plan? So again, both domestic as well as international implications are there for a country like India, especially the a country which is advocating a lot of what energy intensive schemes, as well as who is actually a leader of the global south in the case of this energy technologies. Okay, all right. The first one, fulfillment of international commitments. International commitments. So, what were the international commitments? Especially the most important international commitment for every country related to this climate change is Paris Agreement. Okay, Paris Agreement. So, in 2022, we have updated our Paris Agreement NDCs. Paris Agreement. So, every country has to give an NDC or an INDC, intended nationally determined contribution. So, this every country has to give this INDCs. Okay. So, based on this, we have to work towards this target. Okay. For example, if we are planning to reduce emissions by 33%, then we have to work for that. We have to make sure that by the target year, we are achieving that particular target. Okay. So, here India has actually pledged to cut its emission intensity by 45%. 45, that's actually our INDC. 45% emission reduction by which year? 2030. By 2030, we will be reducing our emissions by 45%. So, this is actually our major concern. That is international level. International level, we have to keep up our word. Okay, we have to keep up our word. Other one, second, they drive a cleaner form of growth. Cleaner growth. Okay, obviously India is one of the fastest growing country, so we want to ensure that it should be a cleaner form of growth. Okay, so this industries, they will be nudged or sometimes even pushed itself towards more usage of more renewable energy, instead of going with this petroleum, or maybe instead of going this non-renewable energy sources, we have to go with this renewable, and maybe we can incentivize them also. Okay, so this is one of our goals, one of the government's goals itself, that is to promote a cleaner growth, promote a much cleaner growth. Okay, so another one, strengthening the carbon markets, strengthening the carbon market. So here is the term is coming, that is carbon trading, carbon trading. Okay, so carbon trading is coming here. So we have to ensure that this carbon, more people are getting incentivized by this carbon trading, and it is actually ensuring that the overall emissions are reduced. For example, some companies might not be able to achieve this particular carbon level, whatever target they have set, but some other companies will be able to maybe they'll be able to perform well. So they have to be incentivized, and these companies, they have to be little more penalized. Okay, so both of them will be managed, both of them will be balanced without much management itself. So this is actually the basic principle of this carbon trading. Okay, so we want to ensure that we are actually strengthening our carbon market mechanism, strengthening our carbon market mechanism. So we'll be having, obviously we'll be having some economic benefits also. Economic benefits also. What are the economic benefits? The energy efficiency will be going up. Energy efficiency will be going up. More green technologies will be coming up. So all these things, new companies will be coming up in this renewable energy sector. It will be incentivizing more companies to come up, while starting itself they'll be able to would come up with this kind of energy efficient technologies and also like that way. So this is also, these are some of the economic impacts of the GEI targets. Okay, also this will make India's industries not just cleaner but also more globally competitive. For example, in European Union and all, there are some criteria. The company has to be this much, has to use this kind of cleaner technology. So that criteria is also there. So we can ensure that matching that also by releasing this kind of a targets also. Okay, so that's also one of the major points. Okay, and also obviously market impact will also be there. This makes emission reduction more economically rewarding, especially for the other companies, and also creates a carbon price signal that encourages more greener technology. Okay, more greener technology. So these are some of the important aims which we have in mind while we have actually drafted the GE rules. Okay, alright. But still, like every thing, we have some challenges also. We are actually facing some major challenges also. One is the MRV complexity. MRV complexity. What do you mean by this MRV? MRV means monitoring, reporting and verification. Monitoring, reporting and verification. So all these things will be little complex. Monitoring, reporting and verification. Okay, so this process will be little more complex. Okay, so one of the major points which we have to keep in mind to promote this industrial or maybe this economic growth is this should be made easy. But as per India's present scenario, keeping track of every ton of emissions across thousands of industries, that is incredibly complex time. How will we do this? So that's actually a major challenge. And also there could be industrial pushback. How there should be industrial pushback? Because this complying could be costly. Complying, for example, green technologies will be more costly. Maybe if you are using petroleum, or maybe if you are using some other technology for energy production, means again it will be cheaper. But if you are going for solar, or if you have to install a windmill, then it will be costly. So this actually, it could be a pushback to the industrial sector. Industrial sectors. That's also one of the major reasons. Another one again, like the SME concern, small and medium enterprises. So they could face even bigger challenges, like the how will they get the funds, lacking of the funds, the expertise, and even the technology to keep. So all these things. So they are actually having mostly in the fund and technology wise. The fund and technology wise, they are challenged. Okay, so that's also one of the major reasons. Another one we have already discussed, so that is a weak carbon market. It is a weak carbon market. Okay, so our carbon trading mechanism, that is not much developed. Carbon trading mechanism is not much developed, even though this is actually a very good scheme, very good what idea, but in the implementation level, we have challenges, many challenges in the implementation level. So that's also one of the reasons. And also lack of the global recognition. Lack of global recognition. Even though India is one of the major players in this sustainable development and all, our global recognition in our efforts, so that is very much low, very much low. So that also needs to be what we need to make sure that is also there. Okay, so what are the broader implications if we are able to bypass all these challenges? Okay, first one, it aligns with the net zero by 2070. Okay, so what do you mean by net zero? Net zero means emissions. The emissions and the absorption, that should cancel out. For example, if you are emitting 1 ton of carbon, you should be able to get back that particular 1 ton of carbon itself. So it should be cancelling. Okay, so that's when we can see that net zero. We have achieved a net zero. So there we have a goal, like we should be reaching the net zero by 2070. That has to be done. So it will be aligning with that, and also boosting innovation in the green sectors, for example, like green hydrogen, green ammonia. So like that way, the pollution will automatically reduce. So we are going towards that also. Obviously, when new companies are coming, when new technologies are coming, more people will be getting jobs also. So that is also one of the broader implication. And obviously, if all these things are now, right, the industrial sector is one of the major contributors of the air pollution in India. So the air quality will also be improved. If everything is green, for example, if you're going to a city where mostly the electric buses are there, electric buses or maybe electric vehicles are there, maybe solar powered what industries are there, then the pollution levels will be very low there. So this will be helping the people, and helping the people's public health also. Okay, so that's also one of the major implications of that. Okay, and obviously it will be attracting the foreign investment in climate friendly nations. So that's also, obviously, this is having an international angle also. Okay, so these are some of the broader implications for India. Okay, so what is actually the way forward? What is actually the way forward? Like I've already said, we have an MRV complexity here. So we need to ensure that MRV systems has to be little more what user friendly, little more user friendly, and this what verifications and all these things should be done in a proper way. Okay, so these are some of the things. For example, like satellite verification, sensors can be there, AI backed audits should be there. So all this will make sure that this emission reporting is more accurate, and it should offer this tech incentives also. Tech incentives, so this will be actually helping these industries so that they'll be transitioning from what the non-green what mechanisms to the green mechanism. And obviously we need more skill building. Now also in our colleges and all, we are not much focusing on this greener technology. Again, now also while studying automobile engineering also, we are mostly focusing on the IC engines and all these things only. Now we have to again shift towards, maybe give more focus to the electric technologies and all these things. Okay, more projects like that should be coming up. That's also there. Obviously market expansion is also the economic angle. Market expansion in this technology is also very much needed. We have to collaborate, global integration, we have to collaborate with other countries, and we need to ensure that we are in line with the other countries, how the other countries are actually what progressing. So that's also one of the reasons. Okay, and phased targets. Phased targets means like what we are actually doing in the GEC. Okay, GEC, what we have done, we've given a first target. So after that will be, next will have a second target will be. Slowly the stakeholding should be, sorry, this stock taking should be like how Paris Agreement is doing. So like that way we also have to do that. Okay, so instead of this overwhelming industries at all at once, tomorrow or maybe by the end of this year you have to do this much, instead of that slowly do. So they also won't be burdened, okay. All right, so this is actually something which we need to look forward, that is a GEI target rules. Okay, all right, moving on to next topic. Again, this from Hindu, today's Hindu editorial. So this is talking regarding the how the post of deputy speaker. So what is actually the relevance of this deputy speaker in Lok Sabha? So it actually says a lot about how our democracies function, not just about deputy speaker alone, but this particular article is even talking about how our democracy is functioning right now. Okay, so what are the issues also we'll be getting, so we'll break it down. Okay, all right, see a previous year question. Again, this is related to speaker, maybe now the deputy speaker issue is actually having a lot of relevance, so maybe you might get a question related to deputy speaker also later. Okay, all right, so we'll see what is actually the news. We'll break it down. What is actually the present situation? Okay, so this is something which is happening for the first time. For the first time in India's democratic history, both 17th Lok Sabha, that is from 2019 to 2024, for second NDA government. Okay, and now the 18th Lok Sabha, the third NDA government or the Modi government, so that have failed to elect a deputy speaker. Deputy speaker, a very important role, that to a constitutional role. So they have failed to elect a deputy speaker. Okay, so two consecutive Lok Sabha without one deputy, without any deputy speaker. So this is unprecedented. This is unprecedented in the entire history of India, entire political history of India. This is something which is unprecedented. So now you might be wondering, why is this deputy speaker so important? Okay, we rarely hear about this deputy speaker. Okay, usually someone will be presiding, that will be speaker, or maybe someone from the palace. So why this deputy speaker is relevant? What is actually the importance of this deputy speaker? For example, you can imagine like a company or maybe a train station. Okay, so who will be the handling all this train, or maybe everything will be handled by the station master. Okay, suddenly maybe he is falling sick. Only one station master is, suddenly he is falling sick or maybe called away. So without an assistant station master, everything will be changed. Everything will be under chaos, because trains means the entire system, the most important what mode of transportation which the Indians, the highly populated the country is using, that is trains, railways. Okay, so the entire system will be collapsing. Even if one station is getting affected, also the entire things will be collapsed. So that is why we need an assistant. An assistant station master is always needed. So if he is falling sick or maybe he is on leave, means another person has to step in. Another person has to step in, so that the entire place could be descend. Otherwise, it will be descending into chaos. Okay. Similarly, the speaker is actually controlling the entire Lok Sabha, okay, controlling the entire Lok Sabha. So what will happen if the speaker, maybe he can resign, maybe sometimes he might die, maybe so like that. If his post is vacant, if this post is vacant, somebody has to perform the duty. Somebody, the constitutional authority has to perform the duty. Someone has to immediately step in, okay, without looking for any panel or something, immediately has to step in, okay. So as of now, we are not having a second in command. So that is actually making parliament under the risk of becoming paralyzed if something is happening to the speaker, okay. So it's not just about the protocol, not just a protocol means we have this panelists are also there, but it's keeping about the engine of democracy running without any interruption. So we need, whether they are working or not, we need people in all levels. We need people in all levels. So that is actually the issue here. Okay. All right. So why this deputy speaker? Why this deputy speaker? I'm not talking about the person who is presiding. Speaker is a constitutional post. Again, deputy speaker is also someone who is mentioned in the constitution. Okay. So we'll discuss some of the articles, which are dealing with the deputy speaker appointment regarding everything. Okay. So the main article is Article 93. Main article is Article 93. So this is exactly what this Article 93 is saying. This is exactly what this Article 93 is saying. The House of People shall, as soon as may be, choose two members of the House to be respectively Speaker and Deputy Speaker. So two people should be there as soon as may be. That should be chosen, okay, to be respectively Speaker as well as a Deputy Speaker. This is exactly what the Article 93, Article 93 of the Indian Constitution. So they clearly say that Lok Sabha shall, as soon as maybe, choose two members, okay. One is a speaker and another one is a deputy speaker. So here you can notice this phrase, as soon as maybe. What do you mean by as soon as maybe? So it sounds more polite, but legally it carries a sense of urgency. It's not a casual option to delay for years. So the idea is that Parliament should have the leadership. Speaker is actually the leader of the, leader of the entire Parliament itself. Okay, so it should not be vacant at any time. It should not be vacant. Okay, I'm not talking about the person who's presiding, but the House, the leader of the House. Either it should be Speaker, or if in his absence, Deputy Speaker should be there. So this is exactly what this Constitution is saying. The leadership should be continued. Okay, so after that we have the Article 94. We have the Article 94. Again, this is related to what till when at what time the deputy speaker should be stepping. Okay, so the deputy speaker holds office until they resign. Holds office until they resign. Either he can voluntarily resign. Deputy speaker can voluntarily resign. So he will still become a MP. Okay, he is still becoming still become an MP, or maybe he can be removed also. He can be removed also, or maybe due to some disqualification or something, he ceased to be a member of parliament. Okay, so then this is actually related to the tenure and removal of this deputy speaker. So how this person can be removed? Again, it's not just a normal MP. Deputy speaker means he is actually having a constitutional post. So obviously, he has to be removed by a majority of all the then members of the house. That's exactly how we have to be removed. It's not just a normal process. Okay, so this resolution to remove the deputy speaker, that itself should be there. House resolution should be there. Okay, all right. Also, we have Article 95 is also. I think that's also very important article. Article 95. Okay, so this Article 95 that outlines that if the Speaker of the or if the Speaker of the House is suddenly absent or he leaves office, the Deputy Speaker must step in so that the duties are continuing. Duties are continuing until a replacement is found. Okay, it's not like once the Speaker resigns or once the office becomes vacant, Deputy Speaker will automatically become Speaker. It's not like that. Like how it is happening in America. If America, what will happen? If the president is dying or president is leaving the office, the vice president automatically becomes a president. Here it is not like that. Deputy speaker is an entirely different. Maybe he can contest later for the post of speaker, but that is not happening automatically. Okay, so this is what is uh, Article 95 is saying. Also, we have other rules. So these are the constitutional provisions. Other than that, we have the Lok Sabha rules is also there. rules of procedures and conduct of business in Lok Sabha. So in this rule 8, what is this rule 8 saying? When the office of deputy speaker is vacant, the speaker nominates a panel of chairperson. Nominates a panel of chairperson to preside. This is exactly what is happening now. So now the deputy speaker is vacant. So from this particular panel, whoever can, or maybe based on the precedence, whoever is what can preside, so that they will be heading, they will be chairing this particular session. But that is different, that is just for that particular session only. He won't be having all the powers of the speaker related to that particular house. So that is only with the deputy speaker. Okay, so but thing like always relying on an ad hoc panel, that is not fair. That is not the same as having a properly elected person. Okay, ad hoc panel, it will be maybe 10 MPs will be there. So whoever will be presiding, so that is not a practice. Okay, for example, if speaker is not there, deputy speaker is not there, automatically the panel members will be there. But that should not be a convention. Okay, that should not be a convention. It's like managing an airplane's cockpit with random pilots. So every few hours the pilots will be changing. That's not fair. There should be a one pilot should be there, and maybe one first officer should also be there. Okay, all right. So now let's zoom into and see how this position evolved historically. Historically, how this, I've already mentioned that this is actually the first time this particular thing is happening. Okay, all right. So how it has evolved historically? The colonial era. The colonial era, we had the Central Legislative Assembly was. So this was under the British rule. So at that time we had the deputy president. The president of the house will be there. So at that time it was a deputy president. Deputy president of the house will be there. Okay, so this deputy president will be elected. So the first person to hold this office, the deputy president, was Sachidananda Sinha in 1921. Again, this was during the colonial era. So after the independence, the post was retained. We never said that, okay, let's have only speaker. Why we need a deputy? So we understood that, okay, what is actually the relevance of the importance of the post of deputy speaker. So after independence, post independence, we retained the office. And when full constitution came into effect in 1950, the tradition carried over to the parliament. Okay, so first deputy speaker was M.A. Iyengar. Who became the deputy speaker in 1952, and also we made sure that this is actually made a constitutional post. The makers of the constitution, they ensure that this is actually a constitutional post. Okay, so this is something which they have mentioned. Okay, so it's not some modern invention. We can easily ignore. It has been there from the historical time onwards, and now we are continuing understanding that there is actually a relevance. So what can be done? What is actually the way forward? Okay, many people have come up with many suggestions. So experts have made some important suggestions on this reform. So one idea is to tighten the constitutional language. So instead of vague phrases like as soon as, maybe, why not clearly state a specific time period? For example, the deputy speaker may be elected within 60 days of the Lok Sabha, or maybe within 80 days, or maybe within 3 months of the first Lok Sabha sitting. So like that way, it should be more specific. As soon as means it is not making any sense. This is what maybe some reformers are arguing. So this would remove any room for this political maneuvering. Okay, political maneuvering. So if you are not selecting, means you are violating the constitution. That provision should be there. Another approach could be statutory invention. There should be a law. Related to this that mandates election of the deputies. We don't have to mess up with the constitution. We can directly use a law and fix a time period in that. And if parliament delays beyond that, the president could empower the prime minister or the speaker to step in and insist on the election itself. Okay, so again, that will also go as a process. So finally, there is also a very important point about restoring the convention. So what is actually the convention? So historically, the speaker post will be from the ruling front. For example, now if NDA is ruling, the speaker will be from the NDA, and the opposition, the UP is there. So the deputy speaker will be from the opposition party. Okay, like the election will be very big. Okay, so like that, we also a convention should be there. But as of now, that convention is not followed. That's also one of the reasons. So this practice fostered the bipartisan cooperation. So there will be a cooperation between. It's not like the ruling party is having all the power in this parliament. So the opposition is also considered. So that kind of feeling will be there. Okay, so this reviving this tradition, that maybe a mutual respect for this friends, that is also there. Okay. All right. So these are some of the important reforms which have been mentioned. Okay. All right. Now let's move on to another important topic. Again, this is also from Polity. This is related to a very important committee, that is a Rajamannar committee. Okay, Rajamannar committee. Again, this committee, or maybe the present issue is related to something which is related to the balance between the federal balance, the center and the states. So that has been debated, especially with respect to the states in which the ruling party is not there. I mean, the central ruling party is not there. They are actually seeking more autonomy. They are seeking more autonomy, and all these things are moving towards. And also, Tamil Nadu government. So they have appointed Tamil Nadu government. They have now appointed Chief Minister M.K. Stalin. He has announced the formation of a high-level committee. So that will be headed by former Supreme Court Judge Kiran Joseph, Justice Kiran Joseph. So the aim is to revisit and recommend how the state constitutional rights can be strengthened. So why I am saying revisit, because earlier itself one committee has recommended more state autonomy, more very radical state autonomy that was recommended. That was a Rajamannar committee. Okay, so there is actually this committee is also, the present committee is also resembling this Rajamannar committee. Okay, so that's why the Indian Express has explained it in detail. Okay, so we'll discuss related to the Rajamannar committee. So we'll see what is actually the present issue. Okay, so this is a previous year question related to this. Again, this is talking related to the federal principles. Those are federal principles dominant in your constitution. That principle is one of the basic features, but is equally true that federalism under Indian constitution leans in favor of a strong center. Strong center. Federalism means it's quasi-federal, not a proper federal mechanism. So that's what this question is saying. It was asked in 2014. Okay. All right. So what is actually the present context? I have already mentioned Tamil Nadu government. So they are actually planning to create a high-level committee headed by the former Supreme Court Judge Justice Kiran Joseph. Okay. So what was actually the context of the Rajamannar committee? 1960s also we had a same issue. We had a same issue. Okay. Central state relation, especially in Tamil Nadu, that was under threat. That was under threat. So major issues, major tensions which we're actually having is, one is related to the use of Article 356. One is related to use of Article 356. What is this Article 356? So this is President's rule. Article 315, we call it a state emergency, or technically it is a President's rule. Okay, President's rule. So this has been randomly used. President's rule has been randomly used, and every time whenever the ruling party is not in favor, some state government which is not in favor of the ruling party, so at that time randomly this President's rule has been applied. Another one is related to the planning commission. As of now, we don't have a planning commission, but it has been replaced by Niti Aayog. So planning commission had become a symbol of the centralized economic control. The state had no say. So that is one of the reasons we have created the Niti Aayog. So here it is said that the states will be having more say in the Niti Aayog. So planning commission became a symbol of centralized economic control. So that also declined, and more resources were also allocated randomly based on the sender's discretion. So that was also one of the reasons, and also obviously, especially in Tamil Nadu and all, this was something which is of very much issue. That is a linguistic and cultural concern. Again, now also we are actually having this particular concern. For example, like Hindi imposition, like the non-Hindi states, they have to clearly adhere to the Hindi rule. So like that way, this issue is also happening. Okay, so at that time in the 1960s, the Tamil Nadu chief minister was C.N. Annadurai. He is actually the founders of DMK, the present party, Dravida Munneta Kazhagam. Okay, so he was very much particularly vocal about this Tamil identity or maybe the Dravidian identity. Okay, so this he decided that enough is enough. We need more autonomy so that we will have a distinct distinct voice instead of whatever the state is saying. So at that time, he actually thought, okay, we'll be constituting a committee. We'll be constituting a committee so that that committee will be recommending why the state autonomy is needed. Why the state autonomy is needed. Okay, so this committee was chaired by P.V. Rajamannar. This committee was chaired by P.V. Rajamannar and it was officially known as the Center State Relations Enquiry Committee. Center State Relations Enquiry Committee. It was chaired by Dr. P.V. Rajamannar. Okay, so he had earlier served as the Chief Justice of Madras. I think you already know he is already in good terms with the the Madras government. Okay, and he already knows the term. So, what was the purpose of this committee? So, to take a hard, very critical look at how the center-state relations, even if it's going beyond, much beyond the constitution, also they have to come up with a new plan. So, this was actually it should be a very a concrete, maybe the very critical look at this center-state relations, even if it's mentioned in the constitution, so that more constitution as well as administrative reforms can be made in favor of the states. So, this was actually the main reason. So, other people who were part of the committee, one is Dr. A. Lakshmanaswamy Mudaliar and also another one P. Chandra Reddy. Okay, all people from the south. Okay, so this was a constitution of this what committee. Okay. Alright, so what is actually the significance of this? This is actually the first time. This is actually the first time a state has constituted body to revisit the federal structure. Okay, like they understood that they're not going into a proper federalism. They're not going into proper federalism. It's more like a quasi-federalism. Quasi-federalism. They wanted to ensure that we are looking into the better proper federalism itself. Okay. All right. So, so this is the significance is actually the first time. Never before a state had set up its own committee to challenge this India's federal structure. Okay. All right. So it was also an intellectual and constitutional assertion. So even though Rajamannar committee recommended a lot of things, many things were recommended, many radical things were recommended by this Rajamannar committee. None of them were implemented. But still, we can say that to the later commissions which came, like the Sarkaria Commission and the Punchi Commission, they also reiterated many of the commission, but maybe not in that kind of a very radical way, but still they also understood that okay, these issues are happening and they also reiterated that. Okay, so we'll see what were some of the important recommendations which were given by the committee. A lot of recommendations were given. I'll just mention some of the important recommendations from current perspective also. Okay, first of all, it made the case that India had morphed into a quasi-federalism. As of now, we have federalism means what? Federalism means the state will be having their own authority without much central influence. It will be having. Okay. Other than that, we have the unilateral government, centralized government will be. So their states are just administrative units only for every centralized system. So they are saying that as of now, or maybe as of now, 1960s, they were going in a states were just considered as administrative unit without much autonomy. So that was a major issue which they had highlighted. That has to be. There should be a solution for that. That was the thing which they have mentioned. Another one, they directly said that we should repeal Article 356. We should directly repeal Article 356, that is President's Rule. President's Rule. So this has to be repealed. This has to be repealed. It should not be imposed to the states. So that was very. We should be relooking this particular thing. And Article 366 that allows center to impose present rule, dismiss any state government without much reason. Maybe they can the later judgments through the later judgments and all they can go to the court. But still, this is actually something which happens in the initial phase. So the government has been using, central government has been using as a tool to or maybe misuse it against to get rid of this opposition rule states. Okay. All right. So Rajamannar committee saw that okay, this is not needed. Okay, maybe because of it has been misused, this has to be revisited. That's what Rajamannar committee is recommended. Another one is financial decentralization. Okay, so Niti Aayog and all, slowly it is happening, but still again 1960s, because of planning commission, it was becoming a more centralized what more centralized administration. So they wanted to come up with a financial decentralization, and to handle any disputes, instead of disputes, they propose something visionary. So that was a permanent interstate council. Permanent interstate council. So this was already mentioned in Constitution under Article 263. Okay. So interstate council, but it's not a permanent body. It's a ad hoc body. So this has to be made permanent. So that was one of the things which they have mentioned. Okay, it is under Article 263. Article 263. So the idea was to encourage more dialogue and negotiations between the states as well as the center. So that was the main idea, and also there is not a top-down approach, but it's a decentralized approach. Okay. All right. So amend all the constitutional provisions which is having autonomy for the center, or maybe more authority to the center, which is so that based on the government's whims and fancies, nothing could be done. For example, Article 256, Article 257, Article 257. So all these things ensure that allow the center to issue directions to the state. So if the state is not compiling to this or not following this direction, they can impose Article 350. So all these provisions has to be removed. So this is what the committee has recommended. Some of the important things this committee has recommended. But was it implemented? It was not implemented. It was shelved. Okay. Still, they also wanted to show that Tamil Nadu government also want to show that okay, these are our concerns. That was one of the reasons. So it was never acted up, never acted upon. 1974, during the tenure of Indira Gandhi, who received a report from M. Karnadi. Again, he was also a DMK chief minister, Tamil Nadu, part of DMK. C.N. Annadure, after C.N. Annadure, it was Karnadi. Okay, so it recommended this recommendation that also remained a political inconvenience. Okay, but still, again, like I've said, the later commission, like the Sarkari and Punji, so they acknowledge the points. And they, while drafting their report, they incorporated this also. Okay. All right, moving on to next one. Again, this is mostly statistics only. So this is related to a SIPRI report, related to the military expenditure of different countries. The previous year question, again, this is related to a START treaty. Okay, so like that way, the military agreements, military expenditure. So like that way, you need to have a idea. Okay, all right. So related to the organization SIPRI, related to this organization SIPRI. So SIPRI is a body which was established by the Swedish Parliament. In 1933. Okay. So what was actually the focus? Its primary focus was to examine the issues pertaining to global peace. Okay, SIPRI is funded by a combination of different mechanisms. Either it can be the government allocations will be there, private contributions will be there, project based. For individual projects also, they will be getting the contributions. Okay, major publications of the SIPRI, that is the SIPRI yearbook. SIPRI, maybe we can call it as an encyclopedia. The SIPRI yearbook, we can call it as an encyclopedia, which is having a what global military trends. Okay, like what is actually the global spendings, which all countries are involved in, which all the technology, all these things is mentioned in the SIPRI report. The headquarters of the SIPRI is in Stockholm in Sweden. Okay. All right, so these are some of the key highlights of this SIPRI report. Everything is statistics only. So they said that the global military spending is all time high. Right? The number of wars have increased. So obviously the countries are investing. For example, if you take the case of India, also the Pahalgam attack is happening. So now India is also arming. Okay, so like that way, every country is actually facing some or other sort of thing. Okay, so the total global spending that has the world has spent a staggering 2,443 billion. That's actually a record high. It's actually a record 5 only for military activities, highest ever figure ever recorded. Okay, so to give you a sense of how fast this is rising, there was a 6.8%. There was a 6.8% annual growth compared to 2023, and the top 5 spenders, they accounted for the 60% of the global expenditure. No confusion in that. Obviously, United States will be in the top. Second is China. Third is Russia. Fourth is Germany, and India is also there in the top 5. That is, India is in the 5th spot. Okay, 5th spot. Obviously, we are more concerned about India. So the global rank is 5th. The India's growth rate is also, the global growth rate is 6.8%. India's growth rate is also not very small. It is 1.6%. It is 1. It has increased 1.6% from 2023. But if you compare it with Pakistan, we can see that there is actually a 9 times increase. There is actually a 9 times increase in the military spending compared to Pakistan. Okay, so that's a very important scale compared to our neighbor. But if you take the case of our other neighbor, we can see that the military budget of China, it is 3.314 billion, 314 billion. Again, they have also risen to 7%, even more than the global average. So while India spending was able to increase more than we are able to cross 9 times of Pakistan. China, you can see that it's 3.314 billion. India is only 86 billion. Okay, and also the regional share, it accounted for 50% of the military spending in Asia. That's also one of the important things in the statistics. Okay, all right. So if you go to Europe, again here also we can see that there is actually a rise since Cold War. Again, you know, right, that Russia is coming, Ukraine is coming, so they are also part of Europe. So obviously many war situations are happening in the Europe also, especially after Cold War. This much wars are happening. So here also we can see that there is actually a increase in the trend. So this includes Russia also. So there is a 693 billion, double that of China. In Europe, double that of China. Here the growth is 17%. 17%, especially this was related to NATO and all is coming. So that's also one of the reasons. Okay, Germany. Go to Germany, the spending is 88.5 billion. So this is actually the 4th highest spender globally and the highest in Europe itself. Okay, Poland is spending 38 billion. So here you can see that the percentage is 31% rise. For a country like Poland, it is 31% rise. Okay, that's also very important point. Okay, so what are the key strategic takeaways for India compared to this neighbors, compared to other people? What are the strategic takeaways for India? Okay, based on this particular statistics. Okay, India's defense budget growth was modest compared to China. Maybe it's 7%. India's defense budget is modest, but still there is a rise. We are not going down, but there is a rise. It sustains a strategic parity regionally. There is a strategic parity sustained in the region level, and also the high investment, especially in the indigenous capability. For example, we are coming up with new aircraft, we are coming up with new indigenous missile technologies and all. That's also very much important. Okay, so India balances between both economic prudence and national security, but now we are again more focusing towards the defense because of this the Pahalgam attack or maybe the unfriendly neighbors. Okay, all right. So this is something the key takeaways of the SIPRI report. Okay. All right. Moving on to the mains practice question. So what is greenhouse emissions intensity? How does it differ from absolute emissions, and why is focusing on intensity important for developing economies like India? Okay, so we can start with what is actually greenhouse gas emission and also mention about the absolute emissions. Okay, so what is the difference between greenhouse emission and absolute emission? So after that, in the body you can see what is actually the difference. What is actually different? Why we have to focus more on intensity rather than absolute emissions? Why we have to focus on intensity? Okay, so finally you can conclude it saying that reinforcing the focus on emission intensity. So that will be ensuring that the economic growth as well as the environmental sustainability is balanced. So like that way you can conclude. Okay. All right. Moving on to the prelims practice questions. So these are the prelims practice questions of yesterday's daily news analysis. Okay. Right. So, with reference to India's agricultural practices and environmental challenges, consider the following statement. Overuse of subsidized fertilizers, particularly urea, has led to significant decline in soil organic levels in India. Soil organic levels in India. So, this is actually correct. This is actually correct. It's a very, because of this, there is a significant decline is there. The rice wheat cropping pattern relevant in Punjab and Haryana has contributed to groundwater depletion, reduced biodiversity. Again, this is also correct. Both of them are general statements only. Okay. So, this is correct. This is correct. India's agricultural policies such as free power supply and open-ended procurement have no impact. This is wrong. It's a very having a lot of impact on the country's environmental health itself. Okay. So, correct answer is A, 1 and 2. Next one, with reference to recent developments in cybercrime regulation in India, consider the following statement. Okay, so this is related to the IFOC, Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center. Okay, very important body related to the cybercrime scenario. Okay, all right. So, Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center now has powers under PMLA. PMLA to investigate and prosecute money laundering. They don't have power to investigate. They don't have power to investigation is under the enforcement agencies only. This is actually a coordination center. They don't have power to investigate. So this statement is wrong. All right. Enforcement Directorate can now directly share and receive cybercrime information from IFOs. Okay. So this statement is correct. Section 66 of PMLA allows authorized agencies to exchange information related to financial gain. This is also correct. So first statement is wrong. 2 and 3 is correct. Next one, with reference to semi-cryogenic rocket engines, consider the following statement. Again, this is from a science and technology. These kind of terms are very much important. Okay. All right. They use cryogenic fuels at extremely low temperature for both oxidation and fuel. It's not for both oxidation and fuel. Okay. It's for oxidizer. It is correct, but fuel it is not used. Fuel it is like the normal what kerosene. Kerosene is used for. Kerosene doesn't mean that it's a normal kerosene from fair price, no, but the purest form of kerosene. So this statement is wrong. Okay. Semi-cryogenic engines typically use liquid oxygen as oxidizer and kerosene as a fuel. Again, both these statements you will be able to either one is only correct. Okay, so like that we also can eliminate. So this is correct. ISR has recently completed the first full flight of semi-cryogenic engine. Okay, so this statement is third statement is incorrect. ISR has conducted short duration hot test only, not a full flight. Full flight is not completed. Okay, so this statement is also wrong. So correct answer is B, 2 only. Okay. So these are the prelims practice questions of today's daily news analysis. So you can go to our website navigator.narayaniis.com and you can there is actually a tab known as daily quiz. Okay, so you click on the tab and you'll be getting these questions and you can directly answer it from there. We'll be discussing these questions in tomorrow's daily news analysis. Okay, we have 3 questions. Again, this we have shown you in the beginning because today is the anniversary. Today is anniversary of the foundation stone laying ceremony of this Red Fort. Okay, so question is, which Mughal emperor was responsible for construction of Red Fort? Humayun, Shah Jahan, Babur, Aurangzeb. Okay, so the correct answer is it is Shah Jahan. Okay, Shah Jahan. Red Fort is in Delhi. Red Fort is in Delhi and it's one of the most important or most iconic. Again, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site also. So it's one of the iconic structures which was during the Mughal period and also during the specifically during the Shah Jahan's time period also. Okay, so the fort remained. Now it's around 200 years that the fort is actually remaining like this. Okay, so it's a good memory for today's significance of today's today. Okay, all right. So that's it for today. Thank you.